Welcome to the video. My name's Cherie, and we're just gonna get right into it. This is my January wrap up, and I decided I'm gonna do books and movies. In January, I read 9 books and I watched 15 movies in January. And I have been wanting to incorporate movies and books onto my channel, and so I thought, why not do that this year? Last year I did a like my favorite movies like so far halfway through the year, and I realized I didn't do like an end of year video. That's fine, there's always the end of this year, but I want to do my wrap-ups every month, and I want to do books and movies because I watch more movies than I do read books, but I also read a lot. So I feel like they're two of my loves and I want to bring them together. So first, we're going to talk about books. All the books I read in January. And I'm realizing I need to start writing down what I thought about the book because, you know, I'm looking back at like the first book I read and I'm like, I don't have any thoughts on that. So we'll see how this goes. I haven't done a wrap up in a really long time. So the first book I read was called Same Time Next Year by Tessa Bailey. I think this might be my first Tessa Bailey book, which is kind of crazy, but I just haven't, I don't know what it is. Like, she's so popular and I just haven't been drawn to like read her stuff, but I want to give it a chance. Maybe this year. I have, I think, like 2 of her books, but I read Same Time Next Year on my Kindle. It's an Amazon original story, and I think at the beginning of the year I just wanted to like start with something short to just like get me off the ground, something that I didn't have to think too much about. So I did that, and do I remember what it's about? Not really. It's a hockey romance, and there's this girl, her name is Britta. Her name's Britta, and there's this guy, Sumner is a professional hockey player, and he is on the verge of being deported because I believe he's from Canada. And Britta, her stepbrother, is on the team with Sumner. And in order for him not to get deported, he needs to get married. So they come up with this plan that he needs to get married. And Britta's known like these guys forever. Britta and Sumner get married. And so it's a marriage of convenience. And I love that trope, marriage of convenience. And she has a lot of trauma around marriage, and because she's like, I'm not getting married ever because of things that happened in her past. But they end up getting married, and they don't like really speak at the beginning. And then their relationship blooms, and it takes place like over a year. And so the same time next year, obviously they are in a different spot. And I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. Thought it was fun. It's short, very short. So 3 stars, it was okay. The next book I read was Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Maria Moreno Garcia. And I read this on my Kindle. I read the first 6 books on my Kindle this year because there's something about holding a Kindle. I don't know, but there's something about holding a book too. But so I read Silver Nitrate, and this book takes place in like the film industry in Mexico in the 90s. And the main character, her name is Montserrat. I actually really like that name. And she is a like sound editor, and she's not like getting jobs. Her workplace is kind of weird, and her boss is like not giving her jobs. And so then she has this friend who's like this famed actor, and his neighbor is a like famous director who doesn't really make movies anymore. And so all 3 of them get together, and the neighbor tells him like, oh, there's this film that I was making and it's cursed, but I think that we need to finish the film to kind of like break that curse. And you know, you hear about stories on set of horror films like The Exorcist and like just different horror films where things just like did not go well, and so they think like the film set is cursed, and that's like what this is basically. And so they help him finish the film, and things start to take a turn. Some good, some bad. It took me a little bit to get into. It was a bit confusing. I was like, what is going on here? But I liked the writing. I liked the way that when I was reading it, it kept me wanting to come back. And normally if I'm like bored by a book, that's not what happens, but it kept me wanting to come back definitely to see like where the story was going. But I just gave it a 3 star. I thought it was okay. Again, it took me a while to like get into it, but once I finally like figured out like, oh, okay, this is exactly what's happening, and I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like this. So I gave it a 3. I liked it. I didn't love it. Also read by her before, like a couple years ago, Mexican Gothic. And again, another 3 stars. I'm gonna keep trying with her writing though, because I find her premise, the premise of most of her books, to be really interesting. So I'm gonna keep trying. Then I read Carrie Soto is Back. I loved Carrie Soto is Back. I had only heard good things about the book. I forgot that I had a physical copy because I read it on my Kindle. But the thing about this book is, and myself, is that I love a sports story. I love a sports story, a triumph story, a sports story. I don't know if it's like from being in the 90s and watching like Mighty Ducks or like Remember the Titans or growing up in that time, but there were some fantastic sports movies like The Big Green and Little Giants. Like there's just so many great like sports movies out in my childhood that I don't know what it is, but I love a sports story. I love a sports story. So I read Carrie Soto is Back. It's about Carrie Soto, who we see in, I believe it's Malibu Rising. We meet Carrie Soto briefly in another one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books. And we just get a little brief of her, but then we get her full book. Carrie Soto it's a tennis story. It's about a woman who was like, got into tennis. She's at the height of her career. She makes it to the top. In most sports, your body can only take you so far once you get a certain age, unfortunately. And I think that's what's happening to Carrie. She's not old. She's only like 30 or something. And I believe she like injures her knee, and like, so she kind of at this point where she kind of has to decide if she wants to retire, and she does. So that's kind of like the first part of the book. We get to see her like rise. And then the second part is her deciding to come back into tennis in her 30s because she wants to defend her title. Carrie is so strong and so headstrong and so determined that it's like, yeah, she's not gonna come back for any other reason. Not because she loves the sport, not which she does, not because she loves to play, but she's like, she loves the competition, and she's like, I need to defend my title against this other girl. And you kind of see Carrie's like transformation from being this like hard-shelled player, because her dad always said that she was destined for greatness, to this girl who finds out a lot about herself and her family, much about her as it is this relationship with her and her dad. And it's just so good. I was eating it up, and after I read it, I was like, I want to read this again. Also, after I read it, I want to play tennis. I literally looked up like, where can I get tennis lessons? And it's funny because my mom used to play tennis religiously for years. I have a great photo of her and like her tennis outfit. It's so amazing. She has like an afro. It's amazing. And so I feel like tennis has like always been in my life somehow. And I'm like, damn, I want to play tennis. And it's just such a great story. 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars. Hands down. Something about like Taylor's writing that I'm just like so drawn into. Her stories are engaging. She makes you fall in love with her characters. She makes you fall in love or hate them, but they're always very layered. And you know, you get Carrie and you get her surface level Carrie Soto, and then you dig back the layers and you see kind of like why she's like this, where she comes from, where she's coming from, and all the things that she learns about herself. And at the end, I was crying. I'm like, oh my God, why am I crying? Because you're with her, you know, through all this. So it made me want to read more sports stories. So the next book I read was Beartown, and I actually have a copy of that one. Beartown by Frederick Bachman, because I kept looking up sports stories and this one came out at like the top of the list. Beartown is basically about this dying town. They have a factory. A lot of the people's jobs are like in that factory, and the town is dying, the jobs are dying. It's just like a town that's almost like been forgotten. And the one thing they have going for them is this hockey team, okay? And this junior hockey team made up of these like young kids, these young boys. This is like the thing that the town has going for them. So you're kind of following like a cast of characters as they like get into hockey. You're really following like the kids and one of the coaches. So one of the kids does something unspeakable, And the book is basically about how the town and people react to that, to what this kid did. It's like hockey is like the thing that like you get into the story with, but the act of violence that this kid does is kind of what like moves the book along. And it doesn't happen very early. It happens kind of later in the book, and you're like, oh shit. And I had no idea like what was gonna happen. I had no idea that that was what the book was about. And I obviously don't want to say much about it, because even on the back of the book, like, they don't say exactly what happens. They just say an act of violence. And I think that it's best not to know unless you have triggers for certain things. So just look up trigger warnings for the book. I thought the book was really good. I like Frederick Bachman's writing. I've read 2 of his other books, and so I was really excited to read this. It's a series. There's another one called Us Against You, and then the third one, The Winners, that came out. When The Winners is huge, that came out, but they're all on Kindle Unlimited. So I read them also on my Kindle, and I ended up giving it 4 stars because I actually thought it was really good. I was lucky enough to get an advanced reader copy of The Teacher by Frida McFadden, which is her new book, and that book comes out February 6th. Frida McFadden is this awesome thriller writer. Wrote like The Housemaid, The Housemaid's Secret, The Inmate. Like, I believe I've read all 3 of those. And so when I saw that Frida McFadden was coming out with a new book, I was like, I'm gonna try and get an ARC. So I did. And so I got one. I got approved, which is crazy. But I ended up giving that book a 4-star. If you follow perspectives from a student and a teacher, the student's name is Addie, and the teacher you follow is Eve. So Eve is like a math teacher, and her husband is an English teacher, okay, at the same school. And so Addie is a student at that school. The previous year, I guess Addie had a scandal with one of the teachers, rumored scandal with one of the teachers, and that teacher is no longer teaching at the school. So there's a lot of, so this year people are treating her like shit, and it sucks. You know, everybody kind of has preconceived notions about what happened or whatever. So Eve's husband, Nate, is a teacher at that same school. He's an English teacher, and so he writes poetry, and he loves poetry. He is also Addie's English teacher. So him and Addie kind of get, I would say, close, like really connect on like their love for poetry and this and that, and they get really close, and things get inappropriate, and that's that. I don't want to give too much away. Eve is really made out to be this like ungrateful wife and this and that, but then you get like Nate from like the women's point of view, and you're also kind of like, Nate seems like this great guy. And so it's very interesting about perspective and perception, and it's the ending, a little bit shook. I was a little bit shooketh by the ending of the book. And I don't know what it is about Frida McFadden. I like her stuff. Straightforward thriller, and she keeps you like on the edge of your seat and guessing the whole time. And that's how I felt reading The Teacher. So that one comes out February 6th. So I didn't know what I wanted to read after The Teacher, but I still wanted to read it on my Kindle. So I read Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that book was very short. It's a short story. Novella. I think it was like 80 pages. I think I read it on my Kindle. It's just like these letters back and forth between a woman whose husband is having an affair with the person she's writing to. That's a man, like his wife. So these two people writing to each other, their spouses are having an affair. And so you just kind of get the letters between them and what kind of like transpires between them and where that goes. And you're like, evidence of whose affair? It's very interesting. It was just this short little novella. I gave it 4 stars. I like things that she writes. And then probably my favorite book of the month, this is probably tied with Carrie Soto, but Yellowface. Oh, I did a whole vlog on this, and this video will probably be out before that vlog, but 5 stars. 5 stars. R.F. Kuang is that bitch. Like, she is that girl. And I love this book. I love this book. I don't want to go into too much depth because I did an entire vlog on this, but her writing in this is so accessible, and it kept me just turning, it's so readable, kept me turning the page, kept me wanting more, and kept me questioning a lot of things in a good way. It's not like I'm trying to figure out what's happening, because I know what's happening. It allows the reader to ask different questions about what is right, what is wrong, publishing industry. It tackles a lot of things. It tackles the criticisms of publishing industry. It's the criticisms of like book Twitter, booktube, Instagram, social media, this idea of like being in the spotlight, being famous, being in the spotlight. And on top of that, like cultural appropriation, cultural leeching, just loved it. I loved it personally. And I tabbed it all up. 5 stars, amazing book. I will be reading everything by R.F. Kuang. And then last but not least, the last book I finished was Erasure by Percival Everett. This is also, I also tabbed this one up, but I also read this one in the same vlog as Yellowface, so that vlog will be out later. I believe I gave this one, I think like 3.5 stars, 3.5, 4 stars. I thought it was really interesting. This is the book that American Fiction is based off of, which is a movie out right now. I think that the movie does this book justice. I think that if this book was turned into a movie in the same style and fashion that the book was written, it would not have worked. I think that the movie brings this book into modern times because this book was written in 2001. I think that this also asks a lot of questions about what it means to be Black in the publishing industry, a person of color. Well, this book specifically, to be Black in the publishing industry, and what authors and the masses, readers, ask of or allow Black authors to write, and how if they want to break out of that bubble, it may not be perceived, or that box, it may not be perceived in the best way. So, you know, we follow our main character, Monk, and he writes like very literary, very heady, very dense things, and the masses don't necessarily read his books, unfortunately. And so then he writes a book called My Pathology, because they said they want a Black book. So he wrote a book called My Pathology. And in this book, we get to read that entire book that he wrote, which was tough to read. And that book ends up making a shit ton of money. And you're just like, wow, wow. But on top of that, this book is also about a family. And that to me is like the main thing of the book. It's about a family that is going through a lot of changes. They're experiencing a lot of loss, and he is kind of left to shoulder all of that in a way by himself. So I think he's grappling with that on top of trying to write this book, on top of trying to be just a Black man in the publishing industry. And I think this book is very timely. And it's funny because like these books are almost very similar. One was written years ago, you know? So it's like we're still fighting this kind of thing in the publishing industry, and especially now. I'm glad I read it. I think people should read this and go watch American Fiction. I think both of them together are like a total package. Like reading this and then watching the movie, total package. So those are all the books I read this month. I read 9, but I only talked about 8 because one of them is published by Wednesday Books. Next is the movies. All the movies I watched in January. For the movies, I'm probably gonna go through them a little bit faster just because I'm realizing there's so many. First movie I watched this year, Color Purple, 5 stars. The fact that Fantasia did not get an Oscar nomination, no. I'm happy that Danielle Brooks got one because her performance was amazing, but to not get Fantasia one, no. The fact there's also only 5 nominees, which is I know we always have that, but there were just so many good performances this year by women. It's like, we need to expand that category. Just saying, we expanded Best Picture, let's expand Best Actress, because that would be great. But Color Purple also is choreographed by Fatima, who also choreographs Beyonce, and the director, he also directed a Beyonce film. So it's like, how did I know it wasn't, I knew it was gonna be good. The choreography was amazing, the music to me was really great, everybody was great. Again, snubbed at the Oscars. I watched Night Swim. I'm the type of person that I'll watch mostly anything. I'll give things a chance. There are some things where I'm like, I'm not watching that, but I watched Night Swim. I gave it 2.5. Classic horror movie. I thought the reasons why these people were being haunted by like things in the pool or terrorized by things in the pool was interesting. Yeah, 2.5. Standard horror movie. I watched The Boys in the Boat. Didn't realize that was directed by George Clooney. All I'm gonna say is Callum Turner. I'm currently obsessed. I feel like he needs to be put in a Nicholas Sparks movie, and I know that that's like a weird thing to say, but if we look at the history of men in Nicholas Sparks movies, he would be the perfect one if we're making a Nicholas Sparks movie today. So, and have you heard his voice? And he's dating Dua Lipa. He's got a lot going for him. A lot going for him. I should probably talk about the movie, like Boys in the Boat. Like, it was good. I gave it 3.5 stars. But Callum Turner, that's what I took away from that movie, honestly. Then I finally watched All of Us Strangers. I gave it a 2.5. I know that sounds crazy, but I like Paul Mescal. He doesn't like do it for me. People love Paul Mescal. I get it. It's fine. Andrew Scott, that was my first thing I saw him in because I hadn't watched Fleabag, which seems like a crime because I know people love Fleabag also. I mean, I thought it was a movie. I thought it was interesting. I think that the concept of going back and getting to like experience these things with your parents who are no longer there, I think that that concept is very, very interesting. And my theory about the film is that he's a writer, he's a screenwriter. So my theory is that he's writing, like this is what he's writing. Like he's writing a story and him actually going back and seeing his parents and getting to come out to them, getting the apologies from them, getting to let them know like, hey, I was struggling when I was younger. I feel like he's writing all of that. And I think that that's like his therapy, almost like a catharsis and getting to like release that. The twist at the end, very interesting though. Then I saw The Teacher's Lounge, which great film, 3.5 stars. So that film is about this teacher who I think has good intentions. There has been like a string of people stealing money at the school, and first they blame this kid and he says like, it's not me. And so then she decides to like record her jacket, just her jacket, with her wallet in it and her purse and stuff to see if like anything happens. Something does happen, and this other like worker gets accused, and things just kind of spiral out of control. The kids get involved and the faculty, and it's very like an us versus them kind of thing. And I think the main teacher is really trying her best, but nobody is making it easy. And I thought it was a really good film. I also watched Mean Girls, which I actually had a really fun time. I heard that people don't really like Mean Girls, but I had a fun time. We love Renee Rapp. I actually liked a lot of the songs from it, and I've been listening to them on my Spotify, so I thought it was fun. I wasn't going in expecting an Oscar-nominated film or anything. Like, I wasn't expecting anything crazy. I just thought it was fun, and I loved the girl that played Karen. The best review that I saw of that film is on Letterboxd. Ditzy brown girl with big boobs is the representation I so needed when I was growing up. And I was like, that's amazing. For the reviewer to be like, to see a dumb brown girl, like, we never see that. And the girl who played her was great. Obviously, it's not the 2004 version, but it's practically the same with songs, and it's a little less like doesn't have as much bite because I think we've brought it into like 2024, and a lot of things that they said in 2004 we don't really say anymore. And so, but it was fun. I had a fun time. Then I watched the original Color Purple. I had never seen it before, and my friend was like, we need to watch it. So she came over, we watched The Color Purple, and it's a great film. It's a great film. The acting is great. It's heartbreaking. And I mean, so is the new one, but it's heartbreaking, and it's a great film. And the fact that it was directed by Steven Spielberg. I remember watching this thing after I watched the new musical about like when they got Steven Spielberg to do the film, the original, he didn't want to do it because he was like, we should have like a black director direct this black story at the time. But then people were like, no, like you need to do it. And he does it justice. It's a great film. And now I want to read I didn't rate that one because it's a classic. A rating I could give could do it justice. You know? Then I watched The Beekeeper because that was just fun with Jason Statham. I wasn't going to watch it because I'm like, this trailer looks so stupid. I didn't realize that Josh Hutcherson was in it. And if I would have known that Josh Hutcherson was in it from the beginning, I would have seen it the first weekend and been done with it. But he was in it, and that made me happy. And I got to watch Queen Rocks Montreal. I'm pretty sure it was like remastered, but it's their concert in Montreal. I believe it's in the 80s. And everybody loves Freddie Mercury, but I love Roger Taylor. After watching that movie or that film, that concert, Roger Taylor is my new crush. He's literally the background of my phone. He's the drummer for Queen, and he's amazing. So it was fun to see that. And I got to see it on IMAX, so that was cool. I watched this movie called Audition, which is this, I believe it's a Japanese horror film. It's about this guy whose wife dies and he decides to have auditions and post it as like he's like hosting a TV show, but he's having auditions to find his next wife. And the girl that he decides to move forward in the audition with, she has a plan of her own. Such a weird movie. It was so weird. And I honestly thought it would be more fucked up because people told me like, oh, it's so messed up. It's so messed up. And I don't know if we're desensitized because this movie came out in 1999. And I think I'm just so desensitized to things like that. I was like, man, this movie was probably crazy in 1999. But now I was like, I've seen and read more messed up things, which made me sad in a way. Because I'm like, I shouldn't be seeing or reading such messed up things. To think that that is film that is messed up is not as messed up as it should be. And I wanted it to be more messed up. Crazy. A fun time. A little slow. For my liking at the beginning, but when things take off, they really take off. Then I watched I.S.S. I didn't think it was good. I'm sad that I didn't think it was good because I love space movies and I didn't think it was that good. And I watched Anyone But You because I just needed something where I didn't have to think very much and it could be fun. And I went in just like that and I had fun. I got exactly what I wanted out of it. I had fun. I love Glenn Powell. I think he's gorgeous and cute, and I love seeing him in any movies. Like, I feel like he always plays that, like, the white president or, like, the good white guy. Even though I think he's maybe the villain in Top Gun, but I like him. I went for him. I thought it was funnier. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. I had a good time. Then I watched Wonka, which is a movie I said I would not ever watch because I thought, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need a Wonka origin story. I love the original Wonka, but it was actually like kind of funny. Also, I took an edible before I watched it. So I don't remember much of the end, but I thought it was funnier than I was expecting. And yeah, I'm glad I saw it. It wasn't the worst movie that I saw this year, that's for sure. Then I watched Aquaman. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now that might be one of the worst movies that I saw this year. I gave it 1 star. I thought, wow, this movie's bad. I love the guy that plays the villain, Yaya. I think he's just a beautiful man. And I really went to watch him because I think he's amazing and I love everything he's in. But this was like the last film, right, of like the original like DC cast of characters. Now they're like revamping the whole thing, which, why, I don't know. I don't know why. Good luck, I guess, because that was not a good movie. I'm so sorry. Then the last movie I watched this month, well, in January, I actually watched it at home. It's called Full Circle, and I actually remember when it was at the Village East, but I watched it, I think it's on Netflix now, and it's about a young man who gets injured and he ends up becoming paralyzed, I believe from the waist down. And so but then he ends up becoming like this amazing like skier and like snowboarder, and he goes to like the Olympics and all of this, and it's just about his story, and it's amazing. And yeah, and it was and he had a tough time obviously, but he seems to be like really positive about it, about his injury and about his life after that. So I thought it was really good, and it's on Netflix now if anybody wants to. So that was all the books and movies that I read and watched this month. I'd say it was a very successful month. My goal is always to read 10 books a month, and if I don't make it, that's okay, but I read 9. So that makes me happy. And then movies, like, I never really have a goal for movies, and I'm wondering if I should set one. No, I don't think I'm gonna do that. But anyway, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.